ॐ श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादशङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् अज्ञानाञ्जह्नवीतीर्थं विद्यातीर्थं विवेकिनां सर्वेषां सुखदं तीर्थं भारतीतीर्थमाश्रये विद्याविनयसम्पन्नं वीतरागं विवेकिनं वन्दे वेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञं विधुशेखरभारतीम्. Dear friends, welcome to today's session on PRABODHA SUDHAKARA. Before we commence this session, let us humbly prostrate at the feet of our Jagat Gurus, Sri Sri Mahasannidhanam and Sri Sri Sannidhanam, on the eve of this very sacred day, which is the Vardhanti day of our Acharya. The previous chapter that we looked at was Atma Siddhi Prakaranam, where the Atman, which is the witness consciousness principle, the absolute consciousness principle, was revealed via the very effective method, Drigdrishya Viveka. It was conveyed, it was taught by Bhagavad-Padha that the Atman is the seer, is the absolute witness, is the one and only consciousness principle, whereas all the other items, all the other objects, including the mind, the body, the buddhi, which is also the mind, then all the objects of the world, whether in the physical world or in the subtle worlds, all of these come under the category of drishyam or witnessed objects. The Atman is the singular light, the singular illuminating principle, whereas everything else except for the Atman are illumined by the Atman. So this fundamental illuminating principle was revealed to us by Bhagavad-Padha, and that is what is known as the Atman. This fundamental illuminating principle is nothing but the true nature of the word I. When one says I or I am, the content of this word I or I am is exactly this witnessing principle. Whatever else we may fill after making the statement I am, that is, for example, I am born in some place. I am so and so's child. I am so and so's spouse. I am so and so's parent. I have these relationships with many people. All these statements which are about this self or I can be observed to be fundamentally based on a misunderstanding. That misunderstanding is when the I is connected with either the body or the mind. For example, when one says, I was born, or I am that person who was born in so and so place, one connects the I with the physical body, which is a mistake, because this mistake is born out of the ignorance about the true nature of the self, which is that I am the witness, whereas the body is a witnessed thing, witnessed entity. I, the witness, can never be really confused, should ideally never be confused with the body, which is a witnessed object. I, the drik, the sakshi, can never be confused, truly speaking, with something which is sakshyam or drishyam. You see a car or a bike or a table or a chair outside of the body, and you identify it as that table, that car, that bike, that objects. which lies outside of myself. We never say, I am that car which goes on the road. We never say, I am that table which lies outside and I am witnessing that table. There is a clear distinction between objects which lie outside of the body and objects which lie inside the body, as one being oneself and other being something else apart from oneself. This distinction between self and other should also be applied to the body itself, because the body, just like something which is outside oneself, outside the body is seen, similarly the body is also seen by the self. The distinction or the distinctive line, the line of distinction between what the self is and what the non-self or what the object is, should be clear and precisely maintained. This lack of precision in identifying this distinguishing line by arbitrarily setting it at the body, when the body itself is a witnessed entity, is the problem. Just as anything external to the body is seen as something else, in the same way, something which is external can only be seen applying this logic. Anything which is seen is only external. Applying this logic, one identifies the body is a seen object. The body is a drishyam. It comes under the category of witnessed entity, seen entity, experienced entity. Something which is experienced, just like car or a bike or a table are experienced, they are not I, they are not myself. In the same way, this experienced body is also not me. In the same way, following the same logic, one identifies that the mind is also distinct from oneself, because the mind is also experienced entity. One observes the mind being quiet or it being disturbed. One observes the mind being calm or the mind being peaceful or the mind being agitated. Various kinds of thoughts and feelings, which are nothing but the mind's manifestation, are experienced. So the mind itself comes under the category of an experienced, a witnessed entity. Therefore, the witness must be different from the mind. This witness is called the Atman. So what is the Atman? As revealed to us by Bhagavad Pada, by the Upanishads, Atman is the Sakshi, and it is the one and only Sakshi. So can we say, I have one Atman, somebody else has another Atman, and so on? This is not possible. The very question of something else existing, some other person existing, is with respect to the body only. I see that there are many other bodies apart from myself. Isn't it so? I see that there are many people in the world, and I know them to be different from myself. This is the common language. This is the common way of speaking. I am one person in the world. There are many other people in the world. However, the reality that, or the idea that there are many consciousness principles in the world, there are many witnessing principles in the world, can never be truly stated. There is an experience of many people, many bodies functioning according to some various laws of nature of their own accord. Definitely, this is true that there are many bodies in the world. Nobody disagrees. Whereas what we disagree with, what the Upanishads disagree with, is the idea that just because there are many bodies in the world, the assumption is made that there are many consciousness principles in the world. There are many witnessing entities in the world. There are many subjects, real subjects in the world. Just as I am an individual, in the same way everybody is an individual. This is a mistake. I am not an individual, really speaking. My body is unique. My mind is unique. Similarly, other bodies and other minds are unique, whereas the witnessing principle is the same at the heart of everybody. Whether it is I as this particular speaking person, whether it is you as that particular listening person, the body is different, the mind is different. The consciousness principle is only one and only unique thing, unique consciousness principle which exists, and that is only one, and that singular entity is called the Atman. So only one consciousness principle exists, which is called the Atman, and everything else comes under the category of seen things. There is diversity. Where is there is diversity? In the seen objects, in the bodies and minds and worldly objects, there is diversity. In the context of the Atman, there is singularity. There is no diversity there. Multiple Atmans are not admissible by the Shastram. And this lies on the resounding truth of the Upanishad, which holds its water in spite of any other objections which may be raised against it. Every objection which can be raised against the statement that there are many selves in the world, there are many witnessing principles in the world, all of those objections can be rejected. Only the Upanishadic revealing idea that there is one and only consciousness principle is there, that alone sustains the test of time, the test of logic, and therefore that has to be the truth. So with this background in mind, now we enter the study of this new chapter, which is called Maya Siddhi Prakaranam. In this Prakaranam, Bhagavad Padal is teaching us how to understand the diversity which has come about in the experience of the worldly things, the mind and the bodies. Various minds, variety is there in the minds, variety is there in various physical bodies, variety is there in the worldly object. Where from this variety has come? To answer that question, this Maya Siddhi Prakaranam is going to help us. As you very well would have come across this word called Maya, this Maya refers to the fundamental principle of diversity, fundamental principle from which diversity of variety springs forth. That is Srishtihi, the manifested varieties in the creation, the manifestation which is available in front of us in the level of the various objects of the world, in the level of varieties of physical bodies, at the level of the innumerable minds, the jivas which are present. This variety which is available, this variety alone is called Jagat or Srishti or manifestation, you can say. This manifestation, by what it has come about, that principle from which this manifestation has come about, has been manifested, that principle is called Maya. So this chapter is helping us to understand Maya, hence it is called Maya Siddhi Prakaranam. So with this background in mind, let us read the verse. Chinmatrah Paramatma Hyapashyad Atmanam Atmataya Abhavat Soham Nama Tasmadasid Bhido Moolam. Chinmatraha Paramatma. So Chinmatraha means Chit Chaitanya Matraha. So that Atman which exists as pure consciousness, absolute consciousness. That Atman which is the Paramatma, which is the singular and the great self, right? So the Paramatma is the word is great self. but it is not great in comparison with other selves. There is only one entity. Because of the singularity of that entity, it is great. Parama Atma, Chinmatraha. Chinmatraha means pure consciousness. Only consciousness alone remained in the beginning, quote unquote, beginning. Originally, when the consciousness alone was there, what happened? Apashyat. That Atman, that consciousness saw itself. Atmanam Atmataya Apashyat. It saw itself. So all of this verse is describing a certain, this verse and the next few verses are describing a certain upakhyanam or a certain one can say story like teaching which is there in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Some of the verses here, right, this verse and the next few verses, as I mentioned, these verses are taken almost as is from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. First chapter of the Upanishad, Prathama Adhyaya, and the fourth section, Chaturtha Brahmana. From that portion of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this particular teaching is taken. These verses are, one can say, modifications of those verses which are present in the Upanishad. These verses are talking about how Srishti came about, how the world came about, how the variety came about. So, originally, so the story begins or the teaching begins in this way. Once upon a time, originally, there was just the Paramatma, there was just the Chinmatra Paramatma. Only the consciousness alone was present. And that consciousness principle, which is Advaita, which is not having any dual entity apart from itself. As we have seen, there is only one consciousness principle, but here it is not only that there is only one consciousness principle, it is that apart from that consciousness principle, there is nothing else which was there at that time. So only that existed, right? That at that time, what happened? This consciousness principle reflected upon its own nature. Atmanam Atmataya Apashyat. So here one can ask the question, of course, if the only consciousness was there, from where the reflection is possible? Only consciousness is there. Mind also is not there. How come reflection is possible? I am consciousness is perceiving itself or reflecting upon its own existence. This reflection upon one's own existence is possible only when mind is present. And indeed, it is true that this is possible only if the mind is present, only if the tool is available, which is called the mind. This mind is available in this state because this verse is actually talking about the pure consciousness in the form of Prajapati, in the form of the Lord Brahmaji, one can say, the original Jiva, the first Jiva, the first embodied existence which was there, the first embodied existence of consciousness which was there in the beginning of Srishti. That embodied existence in the beginning of Srishti is the pure consciousness, but in the form of Lord Brahmaji or Prajapati. Apashyad Atmanam Atmataya. So this Prajapati reflected upon his own nature. What am I? How am I in this way? Apart from him, so imagine one wakes up in a place, imagine that you are sleeping, then you awoke from that sleep, and when you awoke from that sleep, you are aware you are there, that I am awake, that much I am aware, but you don't see anything around you apart from yourself. Imagine yourself in that situation. Your eyes are opening maybe, but you are not having any vision of anything apart from you. Your ears are available, but you are not hearing any other sound. Oh, this sound is coming from there. So if you say this sound is coming from there, then you are aware of something else apart from you. But here in this scenario, the mind is active, but there is no perception of any other entity. What is available to this entity, what is available to this Prajapati is the awareness that I am, I exist. That awareness is there, but there is no other awareness about anything else. This is the situation, scenario which you can think about. How it will be, how this feeling would have been, it is of this type. I wake up from deep sleep, then I imagine or I try to see what is there and I don't perceive anything else, but I know I exist. How is that feeling? How would that feeling be? That is the same feeling which this Prajapati had. At that time, so when he reflected upon himself, when he recognized that I exist, this name called I arose in the mind of Prajapati. Abhavat so aham nama. So these words are, these statements are Upanishadic statements. They are very heavy compared to many of the previous statements which we have come across in the previous chapters. So we can only go somewhat slow with respect to this. So again, I ask you to imagine you are waking up from deep sleep and you are aware of your own existence. And at that time, this word or this thought comes to your mind, I am, I exist. So who is this I? No second reference point is there. Nobody is there to call me by any name because there is no other person at all in this state. If there is other person, then I would have been called Prasad or something by that other person. So now some name is given to me, but here there is no other person, there is no reference point around me by which I can identify myself as separate from something else. So therefore, I am left with only the word which is I am. This is the starting point. Tasmad asid bhido moolam. This recognition of I exist as an entity. This recognition, from this recognition onwards, the duality, the variety is born. Tasmad asid bhido moolam. How is it born? It is going to come in the next few verses. Actually, the few verses are condensation of the Upanishadic verses. So we have to supply the additional ideas present in the Upanishad also here. And I will try to do that as far as possible. So this, now what is the state of mind of this Prajapati? I exist. I am an entity. I exist. This is the feeling. With this feeling, we have to proceed. Now, duality is being put forth. What is the verse? Let us read. Dvedhaiva bhati tasmat patischa patni cha tau bhavetam vai. Tasmad ayam akashaha striyaiva paripuryate satatam. So, when the word I am, I exist, arose in the mind of Prajapati, the first born, the first jiva, this first manifested jiva, then it seems. So we have to supply here the statements in the Upanishad. So the Upanishad gives us some analogy to understand the nature of Maya. So this is the way we have to understand the teaching. Don't look at this teaching as some historical teaching about something which happened in the past and so on. For your present understanding, for our present understanding, these verses are mentioned in the Upanishad. It is not some historical account of how Brahmaji was there, how Prajapati was there, what happened. About Prajapati, if you know that he has some 4 heads, on every head there is a crown and so on, what use will it be for us? We are Vedantic seekers. For Vedantic seekers, understanding of our own nature is the Parama Prayojanam. Understanding of some Purana Itihasa is what happened somewhere before, etc. That is not going to be the Parama Prayojanam. So, whatever we are describing and teaching, and however the Shastra is proceeding, we have to pull the Parama Prayojanam from that. What is the point of this particular teaching? What is the implication for my life, for what I want to reach, which is the truth of myself, which is the Atma Brahma Aikya Jnanam. For that Aikya Jnanam, how is this teaching helping me? How are these verses helping me? Is what we should be interested in. And this is how Bhagavad Padal writes his Bhashyam. He doesn't give explanations for simply for the sake of describing some historical events, and he points it out that these descriptions are only for uplifting oneself from ignorance towards the knowledge about oneself, by which one can attain moksha. For this purpose, we are trying to understand. So, our viewpoint is also that particular viewpoint, not a historical viewpoint of why we are trying to understand what happened some time back. So, now coming back, this Prajapati, his experience was, I exist as a person, and the moment he said, I exist, and apart from me, nothing is there, is also recognized. It seems he had a feeling that if somebody else was there, I would be very happy to have some fun and games with them. I am very bored. I cannot enjoy alone in this state. I am alone there. I cannot enjoy because there is nobody else. There is nothing else for me to enjoy. There is no one else for me to enjoy with. Therefore, I would be happy, or I would want to experience duality. This way, Prajapati, the first born Jiva, that Jiva, manifested Jiva, had a desire. So, Kama enters the picture. What is Kama? Kama is the desire, having the experience of lacking something. That is the primary thing. I lack. What do you lack? I lack the experience of another thing. Why can't you be happy with the lack of such experience? No. I want another thing so that I can have some fun and games. So once this feeling of lack enters the mind, desire crops forth that I should now attempt to manifest that second entity. So for this Prajapati, he wanted to have another entity to play around with. Therefore, he manifested the female principle, which is called Maya. This female principle, which is called Maya, the moment it arose, this Prajapati experienced himself as male. So now two things have been created, the female principle, and therefore as a reflection, the male principle also has been manifested. Now understand that this female principle is not coming from anything else, is not constructed out of anything else apart from this Paramatma, this Prajapati himself, who is also called Virat and so on. The same entity, the firstborn Jiva, he himself is manifesting as two things now. One existence is the female, another existence is the male principle. So, Purusha and Prakriti, Ishvara and Maya. So, two things have come from the same object or same existence, which is the firstborn existence, Paramatma, in the form of Prajapati. From where they came? From the same Paramatma, because the Paramatma has nothing else to manifest from. Suppose there is a, let us say, a potter, and the potter wants to make some pot. He has the desire to play with some pots. He has a clay, and with the clay, he can shape it into pot. Now, there are two. After the manifestation or the creation of the pot, there are now two things. What are the two things? One is the pot, another is potter. So now the potter can play with the pots, no problem. He is happy. But you see, before the pot was created, it was clay, and that clay was different from the potter. So this clay, the clay was made into a pot by the potter, but the clay was itself different from the potter even in the beginning. Even in the beginning, there are two things, the potter and the clay. After the creation of clay, after the manifestation of, the pot, from the clay, the pot was made. After the manifestation, there are now two things again, the potter and the pot. Is the manifestation of Prajapati in that way? No, that manifestation is not in this way. I am the only thing which is there. I become many. That is the idea. Prajapati is the only existence which was there. That Prajapati split into two. This splitting into two is the root of Srishti. This splitting into two or manifestation into two things, the consciousness principle becoming two things, this manifestation is not a real division. It cannot be a real division. Why we say it cannot be a real division? Imagine that everything was the same entity once again. It is Ishvara, it is Prajapati alone existing. To split into two things, you need space to exist. So now two things have come. One is space, another is, so space is requiring, you need space to cut one thing into two, you see. So something is there everywhere. In every point in space, something is there, but the space itself is distinct from this thing which is there in all over space. Like you have a cake and you cut the cake into two. The cake is occupying a certain space, and that through using that space, you can cut the cake into two pieces. So initially itself, two things were there. One is the cake, another is space. The cake is pervading through space. Are the cake and space different? Yes, they have to be different. Without the cake, space is existing. So Paramatma was there before. When Paramatma was there before and he was the only thing which was there, there is no concept of space also. Space also is a secondary entity that also is absent in the beginning. So this cutting business is not possible. So how should we understand this becoming many when there is no possibility of duality in the beginning? When there is no possibility of duality in the beginning, there is no possibility of duality suddenly manifesting also, really speaking. So with this doubt in mind, Shastra says, knowing that this doubt is there in our mind, Shastra says, no, this manifestation is not a real manifestation. It is not a real splitting, but an imaginary splitting. What is this imaginary splitting like? One analogy is given in the Shastra, in the Upanishad, that is very famous analogy, which is the dream analogy. We go to sleep at night, and when we go to sleep, we are one person. We are going to sleep in one particular place, right? And there is only one mind which goes to sleep. That is our own mind. That mind, when one mind goes to sleep, suddenly within the same mind, within the same jiva, many minds and many places and many individuals, many stories are manifested. Where they are manifested? In the dream state, swapna avastha. In the dream state, there is suddenly variety available, whereas in the Jagrada Avastha, actually the person in the physical world is sleeping in one place. And only one individual is sleeping. It's not that if the person is dreaming about some king was there and some kingdom was there, some elephant came, etc. It is not that elephant, king, kingdom, everything was physically available with the person when he went to sleep. None of these are physically available. These are projections, right? These are simply imaginations. They are not real. They are only imagination. Are they various? Yes, there is variety in the dream. So variety is available, but it is not real manifestation, really present distinctions. There is no truth, independent truth in the manifestations, in the varieties, but these varieties are projections of this one mind. In the same way, this one individual, one jiva, one Paramatma, in the form of the original jiva, in the form of the firstborn jiva, Prajapati, having nothing else to experience, then getting the desire that I should become more, I should have somebody to enjoy. With this desire comes forth the two things, female and male principle, Purusha and Prakriti. Maya is another word for Prakriti, but this manifestation is not a real manifestation. It is only apparent manifestation. So, Dvedha eva bhati. So it appears as two. Bhati means it appears. It is available for experience as two things. But not really. Just like the dream has many things, experientially there are many, but not really. In the same way, the two things appear. Purusha and Prakriti, two things appear. And for the mutual enjoyment, these two things appear. Tasmat patischa patni cha tau bhavetam vai. So because of this male and female idea, why this is male and female? Because two things in the world typically from which the new things are born, from by joining of which new things are born, the such two things are generally called husband and wife. Patni, pati. Tasmat patischa patni cha tau bhavetam vai. So these become named as Patni and Patihi. They are in such a relationship because out of their relationship, many different entities in the creation are manifested. The entire creation is manifested. So, Tasmad ayam akashaha striyaiva paripuryate satatam. Therefore, this akashaha here is referring to the Purusha aspect. So again, these words are from the Upanishad. As it is, they are being used here. Akashaha here referring to the male principle. The striya eva paripuryate satatam. It is always fulfilled. The Purusha is always fulfilled by the Prakriti. Fulfilled means what? It is complete. It has one entity, they are existing. But one half is called Purusha. The other half, which completes this half, the so-called better half, is called Stri or Prakriti or Maya. Let us go on to the next verse. So I am apikshan chakre tato manushya ajayanta ityupanishadaha prahur daitam prati yajnavalkyokta yoktya. So I am apikshan chakre. So what happened? So these two entities are there. Then this female principle and the male principle are apparently existing, then this principles, these parts of Srishti, the initial two items, two entities in the Srishti, they visualized, they imagined how it will be when the entire manifestation is manifested. So poetic description of Srishti is what is being talked about here. First one being was there, this one being apparently distinguished into two. Now these two beings are going to further manifest into extraordinary variety, which is experiential by all of us now. So I am Apikshan Chakre. Apikshan Chakre means something they imagined or visualized for manifestation, for the purpose of manifestation. So after visualizing, just like, you want to do something, you want to create something, potter suppose wants to make a pot, first he imagines how the pot should be in the mind. Before imagination, directly he doesn't do that, correct? So you want to make something new, in your mind, you create that object to some extent, right? Initially, you have a visualization of that final entity, final creation, and then only you start the process of actually creating it. In the same way, these Purusha and Prakriti, they have in their mind, they are one entity only. So there is a visualization process of the entire Srishti which happens, and from that process onwards, the entire Srishti happens. Therefore, Tato Manushya Ajayanta. So Manushya is given as one example here, and therefore the human beings are created. Human being is you can say a stand-in for or a particular aspect of entire Srishti. So in the as a representation of Srishti, Manushya, the word Manushya is used here. Iti Upanishadaha Prahuhu. In this way, the Upanishadas is telling. Which Upanishad? Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Daitam prati Yajnavalkyoktya. Yajnavalkya is the Rishi who is telling this particular description in the Upanishad. Daitam prati. This description is about or is mainly concerned with the female aspect. So Daitam prati, female aspect, female principle. It is the female principle corresponding to the male principle, which is Purusha. And that female principle is what precisely is called Maya also. So since these verses are fairly dense, we will stop here today and we will continue in the next meeting. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.